Anthony Hopkins was asked in an interview if the silence of the lambs would make a good stage play.
Oh, no.
You couldn't do this on the stage?
No, you need the impact of the power of the lens. I don't think you could do this. I don't think
The
thrillers
power
work
of the
on stage.
lens.
I mean, I've seen
Now,
some thrillers
there
that
is an
die
intriguing
relatively
concept. When Hopkins talks about the power of the lens, he probably doesn't mean the optical power, but something more emotional that has to do with how lenses are used in cinematography.
Lenses are the eye of the audience, the window to the world that a filmmaker opens. How someone experiences a film is a lot about where the camera is placed and what focal length is used. In this episode, we're going to explore how to use the power of the lens for visual storytelling. Most of us grab a focal length instinctively, but deconstructing that can give us a deeper, more sophisticated understanding, improving our ability to create captivating art. Veteran Hollywood DoP and former president of the ASC, Kees van Ostrum, will help us with that task. And who could possibly have better insights in that subject than a DoP that was also the President of Cooke Optics? Together we will break down a simple question. When do you grab what focal length in your arsenal and why? DZOFilm was so kind to sponsor this episode by loaning us a full set of the Arles Cineprimes reaching from 40mm all the way to 180mm. This extremely wide range will help us to show and explain the effects of distance, magnification and emotion. Of course, we will include a test of these beautiful lenses.
Let us put the power of the lens in your arsenal. Fly, fly, fly. Fly, fly, fly. It is quite amazing how cinematography gives a storyteller the ability to put his audience in a place. And I don't mean that in the sense of destination, situation, time, genre, but in a simple physical way. Right now, you are about 4 meters away from me, basically laying on the floor, a mouse watched by a cat behind a wall of glass. Come here. I can let you get to my eye level. That feels different, right? But now you're close to the glass and I can invade your space and make that glass disappear in your mind. The power of the lens changes the perspective of the audience, literally and metaphorically. Filmmakers can use the position of the camera and the lens's focal length to convey complex emotions, power dynamics, a sense of urgency, danger, safety, or distance. There are many great examples in the history of filmmaking. When we watch the shower scene in Psycho, we are overwhelmed by what is happening. We, the protagonist, can't die. We are in absolute shock. Hitchcock achieves disorientation by cutting 52 times in 45 seconds between, well, the amount of camera and lens setups is under dispute. A lot of chocolate sauce in those shots. An extreme example for how effective switching position in lenses can be. Before we go into more practical application, let's take everybody along with a recap. These are the basics of optical power and focal length.
In optics, optical power is the degree to which a lens converges or diverges light. Power is inversely proportional to focal length. This means that a lens with a short focal length has a higher optical power than a lens with a longer focal length. Just think of it like this. You need more optical power to squeeze more field of view into the same space, or vice versa. Of course, focal length has always to be seen in context of the format it is used on. A normal lens on 35mm full frame would be 50mm. while you would get the exact same framing when using a 25mm on Micro Four Third or 100mm on IMAX. The larger the format is, the less optical power is required for the equivalent framing. Therefore, a larger format doesn't only provide a higher resolution, but also less optical aberrations. Potentially, of course. That doesn't mean that a larger format looks intrinsically different than a smaller one. The perspective remains the same. Perspective is determined by position. To change perspective, you must physically move the camera. This also means that if you want to show a talent in a consistent size, the camera has to move and the perspective changes. A wider lens will show a lot of background, while a long lens will show less background. It appears larger and therefore closer to us. This effect is called telephoto compression. The talent will also look flatter and the features like the nose less pronounced. Therefore, longer lenses are often referred to as beauty lenses and used for portrait photography. It can be confusing when you listen to advice from famous DOPs on YouTube. Before the digital age, and basically until the Arri Alexa LF came to market, a discussion about focal length would presume a Super 35mm or Academy format. So, if Roger Deakins talks about a 35mm lens, that would be a normal lens translating to a 50mm focal length on full frame, unless it was a very recent interview. The look in terms of perspective, compression, field of view and even depth of field remains the same, if equivalent lenses are used. If you don't know what equivalent lenses are and why they look exactly the same, we have a relatively easy to understand piece on that in our f0.3 The Impossible Lens episode. There's a link in the corner. In this episode, we will always have a Super 35 focal length on the left and the corresponding full frame focal length on the right, when we are not talking about a specific lens, but about the look of a focal length. If a scene is shot on larger formats, we will add the focal length in the upper corners. A normal lens resembles human vision, which is a bit strange as human vision can be so many things. Human vision is very wide, covering around 180 degrees field of view. So why isn't an extremely wide 40mm lens considered a normal lens? It's about the magnification. When you look through a camera's lens and an object appears to have the same size as you would see it with a bare eye, you have a normal focal length. A normal lens doesn't resemble the wide field of view, but the human experience looking at an object or a person. This will also mean that distance, perspective, dimension and movements are perceived as normal. A wide lens covers a wider field of view than a normal lens. Objects in the foreground look larger, while the background looks smaller. The distance between subject and background is exaggerated, making the world we are in look larger. Movements and shaking of the camera is less apparent as the change in position or angle is relatively small in relation to the field of view, which makes wide lenses ideal for handheld, shoulder rigs, gimbals, steadicams, dollies and sliders. Wide-angle lenses make slower movements appear faster and more dynamic, enhancing the dramatic feel of a scene. Wide lenses show more of the scene and have deeper focus, conveying where the audience is. Films like The Revenant were shot on wide lenses ranging from 12 to 18mm, shot on Super 35 Alexa Open Gate, which translates into 15 to 24mm on full frame. The ultra close-ups bring the audience into the character's personal space and emphasizes the vast wilderness. The exaggerated distance can also be used to show the disconnect between characters, like you see it in Fallen Angels. Practically, your talent can be so close that you have to be careful.
I'm so sorry.
On longer lenses, things appear closer to each other than they are. Their distance relative to the camera is less impactful. The field of view is very narrow, isolating a character from the world around. Movement of the camera is more apparent. Just like in macro photography, technical problems like an unstable camera, vibration, even operation of a focus motor can become visible. Handheld work and even dollies become exceedingly harder with longer focal length. The compressed distances can be used for storytelling in many ways. For example, to show a character fighting an uphill battle, like in this scene where Dustin Hoffman runs and runs and runs with seemingly little progress. The change of focal length and distance at the same time can be used to create the famous dolly zoom. It lengthens or shortens perceived distance during a shot. A dolly zoom can also show the effect of compression through different distances on a subject fluently, like we did on our zoom episode, link is in the corner. As the distances and the zoom factor have to be very large for a pronounced effect, our example has only a subtle change in look. In our zoom episode you will find many examples and techniques from crash zooms to dolly extensions, link is in the corner. The aspect ratio, so how wide an image is relative to its height, can be very relevant to the choice of a focal length. A crop to a wider aspect ratio will impact the composition, meaning that important parts of the scene might not be visible. One has to cut into faces and the likes. If you desire to maintain the height of the uncropped composition, you will need to shoot with a wider focal length. David Fincher likes to frame much wider than his desired end format to be able to pan within the image, tune his signature character tracking, or to simply destabilize a static image. Modern digital sensors and great optical performance like the DZOFilm Arles offer give you a lot of headroom while pushing into the image, so there's little reason not to shoot a bit wider in general.
Some directors and DOPs develop their own styles, and that will include a preferred focal length. That doesn't mean that a director will stick to that when a movie or a scene calls for something else. Sometimes their style changes with personal development, technology, or with the zeitgeist. Sometimes the budget or technical restriction can result in a filmmaker using a single focal length for a whole movie. Like The Godfather was shot primarily on a 40mm Super Baltar. Sometimes just using one focal length can be the concept of a production. As usual, there's no right and no wrong.
Let me introduce you to veteran DOP Kees van Ostrum, who has many classic Hollywood movies like Gettysburg under his belly. He was the president of the American Society of Cinematographers, short ASC, and the president of Cooke Lenses. Who can possibly know more about lenses? I am blessed to be able to call Kees a friend after meeting him in China a couple of years ago. Last year he invited me over to a shooting for Symphonic Cinema in Amsterdam, and I had the chance to shoot this behind-the-scenes footage with him in action. I didn't really know what he was shooting when I drove over, and I will never forget when he introduced me casually to the talent of the day. 2 times Academy Award winner for Best Actress Emma Thompson. You can imagine that I dragged my chin over the floor for the rest of the day. I also met director Lucas van Werkom and producer Wim Lenhausen. Wim knew Stanley Kubrick, personally. Through his hand I shook Kubrick's hand. I haven't washed my hands since. This day gave me some fantastic insights in the process of these filmmakers and their very interesting film concept. Symphonic cinema is a groundbreaking concert format that reimagines the relationship between music and storytelling. Unlike traditional film and concert presentations, this innovative approach allows orchestras to perform freely and authentically as they would in any classical concert setting. Narratives are seamlessly woven together. The latest incarnation of the symphonic cinema is Lost, starring Emma Thompson and Greg Wise. Based on The Planets by Gustav Holst, it will premiere beginning in May in the Sydney Opera House. But there will be other performances around the globe. I will put links to the official trailer and website in the description. If you have the chance, see it. It's a deep emotional experience. It is what happens when true artists create something. Exactly that is what makes it so great that Kees agreed to share his insight on the subject with us. Besides being the legend that he is, he's also an active professor at the Shanghai Theatre Academy. Where else?
In movies, every choice made by the filmmaker shapes how the audience feels and understands the story. One interesting choice is just using one type of lens throughout the whole film. At first it might seem limiting, but many great directors have used this trick to create a strong, consistent way for viewers to see and feel the story. For example, Alfred Hitchcock often used a 35mm lens, Steven Spielberg liked 28mm, Roman Polanski chose 32mm, and Gordon Willis favored 40mm. These numbers aren't random, they relate to how we naturally see the world. Lenses between 28mm and 40mm give a view close to how our eyes focus on what's around us. They don't stretch or squish the image like a very wide lens or a super zoomed-in lens does. This means the lens shows both the characters and their surroundings clearly, just like we see in real life. By using one of these lenses for the full movie, filmmakers help the audience feel like they're really there with the characters. It's like looking through a window that doesn't change, so the story feels steady and real. Sticking to one lens creates a kind of rule that filmmakers have to work with. This pushes them to be creative with how they move the camera and arrange scenes. Because the view doesn't suddenly change, the way the camera moves feels natural and the space looks believable. The audience can understand how far apart things are and where everyone is without getting confused. For example, Hitchcock's 35mm lens in Rear Window helps make the small apartment feel tight and tense.
Turn out the light, he's seen him.
Spielberg's 28mm lens in E.T. makes the neighborhood feel open and real. Polanski's 32mm lens in The Pianist gives a raw, personal feeling. And Willis' 40mm lens in The Godfather balances closeness and showing the world around the characters. Using just one type of lens doesn't just make things look clear, it shapes how we feel the story. The camera acts like a human eye, watching everything without jumping around. This helps us connect with what's happening on the screen, feeling the emotions and space alongside the characters. The choice limits fancy camera tricks, but opens up storytelling in a fresh way. The movie feels more real and the characters come alive. Zoom lenses let filmmakers quickly go from wide shots to close-ups without moving the camera. This is handy, but can cause problems for the story and the way we feel about what we see. Long lenses or zoomed-in shots squish the depth in a scene. Things that are far apart look close together, making the space seem flat instead of feeling like you're looking into a real room or an outside area. It looks more like a flat picture or stage. Wide lenses keep the surroundings clear, helping the story by showing where characters are and what's around them. Zoomed-in shots often blur or cut out the background, so the character feels like they're floating alone without a connection to their world. When the camera moves physically with a wide lens, the audience feels like they're moving through real space. Zooming instead changes the view without moving the camera, which can feel unnatural and jerky. It's like you walking, but suddenly everything around you just changes size instead of you moving closer. Zoom shots often become a quick way to show emotion by suddenly making someone's face bigger. But this can feel fake or forced because it skips the slow build-up of feeling through the scene and movement. It can make the movie less touching and more like a shortcut. When actors move closer or further from the camera, it naturally changes how big they look. And this movement carries emotion. A person walking closer might feel like they're coming to you for a hug or to confess something important. Moving away could mean they're pulling back or feeling distant. This is strongest with mid-wide lenses like 28mm to 40mm because they show depth and space clearly. You see the background shift naturally too, giving a real sense of distance and closeness. With long lenses, this effect is flattened. Actors don't feel like they're moving through space as much as sliding on a flat screen. This makes the scene feel less alive and the emotional movement less powerful. Hitchcock's Rear Window uses depth well as the character moves through the apartment, and Spielberg's Close Encounters captures awe and wonder with characters moving toward mysterious lights. Tarkovsky's long shots let viewers feel the space as part of the story with natural movement through big settings. Zooming instead of moving the camera breaks the natural flow of space and makes it harder to feel close to the characters. It takes away a sense of a living environment and makes emotional movements less rich. The choice of lens isn't just technical, it's part of how a story feels. Mid-wide lenses keep the space real and emotion strong by showing the full environment and the natural way people or objects move through it. Zooms and long lenses might be convenient, but they often flatten and distance the story, making it harder for the audience to connect deeply. For filmmakers wanting to tell heartfelt, immersive stories, respecting how lens choices affect space and emotion is key. It helps create films that don't just show a story, but let us live it.
Thank you so much, Kees. I hope to see you soon back in Europe. If you're looking for a very quick and simple rule of thumb, here's an interview with Roger Deakins about where to put the camera and what lens to use.
Well, I've got a very strong feeling about lenses, and personally, I'm sitting here talking to you, and you're filming me from over there on a shoulder and probably a single, where I'd rarely do that, because I think, the camera wants to be, to me, I would shoot singles inside here, unless it's for a particular effect, and then I'd drop back off and be more observational with a shoulder in. I mean, I think it's a totally different effect to an audience looking at somebody on the end of a 100mm lens, as opposed to somebody that's being shot on a 27 close to or 21. So here we are, 32mm or 30mm. It's on a zoom, so sometimes you can't tell what the millimeter is. Anyway, but it's different, right? There's a sense of presence. You're right there with somebody as opposed to being. I think psychologically, it's a totally different effect. So, I mean, it's just the same as your relationship in real life to somebody. I'm sitting this close to you. I'm not seeing you from over there on a long lens, So I don't think we take that into account as much as we should, really.
Let's explore some other iconic characters and their approaches. Of course, there are many preferences by different directors and cinematographers throughout the history of cinema, and reasons to depart from the natural look that Kees embraced earlier.
Terry Gilliam's love for the surreal is underlined by the distorted field of view of ultra-wide lenses. His cinematographer, Roger Pratt, made use of the famous 9.8mm canoptic for many scenes in Brazil, the same lens Kubrick used for the Steadicam shots in The Shining. 12 Monkeys was shot predominantly with wide lenses between 10 and 70mm focal length. Pratt stated that it's hard to break from a wide look once it's established within a movie. Wide lenses, close distance and weird shooting angles are used to make the audience as drugged as Bruce Willis's character or as crazy as Brad Pitt's. Jean-Pierre Jeunet likes wide lenses and doesn't shy away from close-ups with distorted faces for a surreal look. His DOP Darius Khondji heavily featured wide-angle lenses, specifically 80mm and 25mm lenses for delicatessen. As storytelling is limited by a narrow field of view, there are few examples of directors or cinematographers that shoot whole features on long lenses. But they can be effectively used for inner monologues, like Tony Scott and Jeffrey Kimball did on the bathroom scenes in True Romance. Director Tarzan switches between long and short focal length, producing a very stylized vision for his movie The Fall. The sequences are not part of the movie's reality, but of a story within that story. Tarzan uses the power of the lens to underline this break and take the audience with the narration. Akira Kurosawa did not like wide-angle lenses. According to his cinematographer Takao Saito, he also avoided zooming, though zoom lenses are on the camera most of the time. Instead, zoom lenses are generally locked down to a specific focal length, very often 75mm, that is equivalent to 100mm on full frame. Ridley Scott likes the compressed look of longer lenses and uses them effectively to create tension and disorientation. John Mattison, his cinematographer on Gladiator, once said in an interview that Ridley can't take his hands off the zoom in all of his movies. Kubrick is famous for doing just that. He excessively zoomed in Barry Lyndon, which can be seen as experimental in regards to lens usage, especially with the Zeiss Planar 50mm f0.7, which brings us to using focal length for technical reasons. Some productions are under so much time constraints that scenes are shot with multiple cameras to get the coverage they need, especially for TV shows. Shows like Friends, King of Queens, 2.5 Men and The Big Bang Theory are shot with multicam setups and have to use longer lenses for close-ups. This can create the look of a show unintentionally, and even high-end shows like Game of Thrones sometimes shot with multiple cameras to cope with their gruesome schedules. And of course, all this really has a lot to do with how the audience views a medium. More immersive mediums like IMAX or Apple Immersive Video film more of the peripheral view, and much wider lenses are required to replicate that. Unless your name is Nolan, who frames IMAX for ordinary screen sizes, basically for better image quality rather than more immersive larger image presentation.
With all that input, it's always interesting to hear what strategy you have. Do you work instinctively? Do you have a rule of thumb? Or do you follow a special school of thought when you reach for a specific focal length? Let us know in the comments and read and learn what other mortal filmmakers have to offer. I hope we can make something inspiring happen within our community. So take a minute and try to articulate your technique. I can't wait to read your thoughts.
We will now go into the practical part of this episode and show the same motives and movements with focal length ranging from an extreme wide 40mm through the normal range all the way up to 180mm. This way you will be able to get a great feeling for how field of view, depth of field and perspective play together, or short, what lens will work best for a given context. We will shoot on a Kinefinity Marvo LF that has a full frame sensor. We will put the equivalent focal length and aperture for Super 35 and digital medium format on each shot, so you know exactly what focal length to grab when you don't shoot on a full frame camera. This way, the segment can work as a kind of compendium when you choose a focal length for a project. Like mentioned, we have a full set of the DZOFilm Arles at our disposal to do that. As this exercise will simultaneously be a test of the Arles, we will include things like close focus, breathing and bokeh. Of course, the latter is dependent on the speed of a lens, and the Arles are speedy at t1.4. Still, it will give you a very good idea of the relationship between subject and bokeh relative to a focal length with any lens set. Let's start with a brief overview of the Arles Cineprime so you know what you're looking at. The Arles Primes are the high-end lineup of DZOFilm. They are big, fast and cover full-frame VistaVision, delivering everything you expect from a high-end cinelens. They have unified dimensions with 121mm length, with the exception of the 135 and 180mm that are slightly longer. And all lenses have a 95mm front diameter. The primes have standard cinegears with unified positions for quick lens changes. A focus throw of 270 degrees allows for precise focusing. The focal length from 18 to 100mm have a very fast t-stop of 1.4. The 18-bladed iris provides beautiful round bokeh. And the breathing is very controlled on all focal length. Of course, the whole set matches perfectly with characteristics and color reproduction. In this range of lenses, mechanics are the complex and therefore the expensive part of the manufacturing process. The Arles have a great sturdy build with smooth movements. Overall, the high-quality mechanics that DZOFilm is known for at its best. While the mechanics are not on par with mechanics of something like a Cooke S8, the image can compete even with lenses in that class. And that is amazing, considering that a Cooke S8 costs $35,000 per lens, while an Arles costs around $2,000, depending on the focal length. It is exactly that makes the Arles a great candidate for studios and owner-operators that might not have the tough conditions that some rental lenses have to endure. But even for rental houses with a tiny fraction of the price, repairing or replacing a lens is not a huge issue. The Arles are not light. The weight of each prime hovers around 1.5 and 2 kg depending on the focal length. Therefore, they are better suited for tripods, dollies and the likes. But still, you can absolutely manage to use them handheld. We shot a short film handheld, pulling focus manually for a Lumix S1R2 review.
Yes.
And the weight pays off as the image looks lovely. While the Arles are in the camp of the highly corrected lenses that produce minimal spherical aberration and muted flares, they still have the pleasant softness and charm that you expect from a cine lens. Especially when you shoot wide open, you get a wonderful poetic note without the image falling apart. T1.4 allows you to shoot 120 frames per second with base ISO, using just available light, like in our tunnel example here. The bokeh is stunning wide open and throughout the whole aperture range.
Full disclaimer, DZOFilm sent us a complete set of Arles to support the creation of this episode. Unfortunately, we can't keep them. Still, we will mark this episode as a paid promotion. As usual, that doesn't mean that we can't give you our honest opinion. Our goal is always to inform you and to show you what gear is capable of. With that input, you can make up your own mind.
For a test, we went in the studio at the Marmalade and set up a little scene with a piano. And to all you musicians out there, sorry, Max can't play the piano, but he can act like if he could. Full method. Frederick Pelzer will help us again with expertise, focus pulling, shooting behind the scenes stuff, and so much more. Our key is a large breather reflector with an HMI light at 5600 Kelvin. We have a large tungsten on a dimmer on the left and an LED at 5600 Kelvin on the right. For the low-key images, we will add some string lights, which will give us the bokeh we want to show you. Well, Max might not be able to play the piano. Ironically, the fabulous Frederick Pelzer can, very well. A man of many talents. And this was the moment when Max fell in love with Frederick.
We really love the Arles. They are and have been our go-to lenses for a while now. Basically, every time we are not looking for something vintage, anamorphic or very light, for example, to go on a car mount.
They are still light enough to go on gimbals and sliders and give a very solid feeling using them handheld. There's really nothing to complain about other than that the Arles are not travel friendly. If you spotted some reflections in our shots, they are not from the Arles but from our terrible NDs. If you are a manufacturer with great full spectrum NDs, we appreciate donations. Just saying. Also, the 40mm looked very wonky in the corners, but that could very well be an isolated problem as we had to remove a shim to reach infinity focus. These are demo lenses that have been on tour for a while. The only thing really missing with the DZOFilm Arles is the lens data in form of Cooke Eye, like the Vespid 2 have. Cooke Eye is a real nice feature, especially when you don't have a clapper on set, so counterintuitively, it makes more sense on low-end productions than on high-end, where shots are usually well documented. As implementation is a bit lacking, we have an episode about lens data, link is in the corner. I would not call it essential, and it doesn't really take away from the Arles Cineprimes. If you need lens data and/or you need to carry your lens sets with you most of the time, the smaller, slower siblings of the Arles, the Vespid 2, might be for you. We have a test episode about those online. I'll put a link in the corner. In that episode, we also compare the Arles to the Vespid 2 and the OG Vespid in a side-by-side test. We really like the Vespid 2 as well, but personally, I love the magic of shooting wide open, and the Arles just give you that crucial bit of headroom over the Vespid without falling apart. If you need something super compact that is still as fast as the Arles, the Samara C might be for you. They are only available for short flanges and they are much less controlled wide open. So very different beasts. But priceless if you want to take a set of Cineprimes in your hand luggage on a flight. If you work a lot in a studio and you don't mind heavy equipment, the Arles deliver a fantastic bang for the buck with an image quality rivaling the big European and Japanese brands at a fraction of the price. For just $2,000 per lens, this kind of image and mechanical quality is a steal. I want to thank Kees van Ostrum for his support and valuable input for us and the whole community. Thank you to the Marmalade for letting us use their studio and heavy equipment. There's no way that a YouTube channel can make enough money to justify snide things like a Panther dolly and an O'Connor head. I want to give a great thank you to Max Heinemann for being our talent one more time. Always a pleasure to work with you. I want to give many thanks to Frederick Pelzer for collaborating with us for this episode. Your knowledge and practical know-how is priceless for productions like ours. I hope to have you around many times in the future.
Of course, and like always, our hearts go out to our members that make complex productions like this possible. I cannot thank you enough. If you want to support us, you can do so by becoming a member of the media division yourself, or simply by liking this video if you feel that we deserve it. If you want to recreate our Hannibal Lecter cell, we have a whole tutorial in our The Magic Sauce episode, and our Lynch and Kubrick members can download project files for After Effects and Resolve. Check it out. We have a lot of cool stuff in production, so if you don't want to miss out, subscribe if you haven't done that already. If you are a manufacturer and you would like to show your interesting gear, service or tools to a lovely community of professional filmmakers, you will find our email address in the description. I hope to see you soon here in the media division. Until then, shoot something amazing.